to Rule 4B3, members of the House Armed Services Committee who are not members of the subcommittee are allowed to participate in today's hearing and will be recognized after all subcommittee members have had the opportunity to ask questions. The Strategic Forces Subcommittee meets today to receive testimony on the policies and programs related to nuclear forces and atomic energy defense activities. Appearing for the subcommittee, we have Ms. Teressa Robbins, the Acting Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration, Dr. Brandi C. Vann, who is currently performing the duties of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear, Chemical, and Biological Defense Programs within the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Ms. Andrea Yaffe, the Acting Assistant Secretary of Defense for Space Policy within the Office of the Secretary of Defense, Vice Admiral Johnny Wolfe, it's not in order, the Director of the Navy Strategic Systems Program Office, and Lieutenant General Andrew Gebara, the Deputy Chief of Staff for Strategic Deterrence and Nuclear Integration for the United States Air Force. Thank you all for being with us today. While the top line numbers of the President's budget request for fiscal year 2026 have been released, programmatic information has not yet been made public. This means our witnesses will be unable to comment on specific levels of funding for individual programs, as was the case in last week's hearing on missile defense activities. Nevertheless, we appreciate your being with us today to testify about our nuclear forces and look forward to hearing from you about how we are sustaining our legacy capabilities and the progress we are making towards modernizing our deterrent. The scale of this challenge cannot be overstated. As a result of previous decisions to delay and defer modernization, both the Air Force and the Navy find themselves sustaining submarines, missiles, bombers longer than ever before, while simultaneously carrying out major development efforts to recapitalize each leg of the triad. The same is true for the National Nuclear Security Administration, which continues to operate in facilities that date all the way back to the Manhattan era, such as the Beta II facility at the Y-12 National Security Complex in my home state of Tennessee, while also rebuilding its production complex and restoring the nation's ability to build nuclear weapons. However, while sustainment and modernization are both necessary and foundational efforts, it is also clear that they are not sufficient to meet the dynamic new nuclear threat environment. China's nuclear breakout has fundamentally transformed the security landscape. Russia's nuclear stockpiles continue to grow as well, and the return of great power competition has replaced the bipolar post-Cold War environment of relative geopolitical stability and declining nuclear arsenals with a new tripolar environment that is less stable and more competitive. This was not the future we anticipated when the plan for nuclear modernization was developed. We must adapt to these new challenges and supplement our modernization plans with tailored capabilities to address the changing threat environment. We look forward to hearing more from our witnesses about these issues. And before turning to the ranking member for his opening statement, Dr. Vann, it is my understanding that you will be retiring from government later this year. So on behalf of the subcommittee, I'd like to thank you for your many years of service. I now recognizing my good friend, ranking member, Mr. Moulton, for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I want to thank you for your leadership of this committee and a bipartisan approach to the challenges that we face, and of course welcome our panel of distinguished witnesses. Over the past decade, the global strategic landscape has continued to deteriorate. The CCP is dramatically expanding their nuclear arsenal. They are ahead of us with new and destabilizing delivery systems like hypersonics, and China has few established nuclear norms of safe behavior. Meanwhile, just this past weekend, war criminal Vladimir Putin threatened to bring his criminal war to a, quote, logical conclusion with the outcome Russia requires, end quote, using nuclear weapons. Recent escalation between India and Pakistan raises concern about either side employing its nuclear arsenal, and all of this calls into question decades of nuclear stability, which makes the work of our witnesses and this subcommittee all the more important. Nuclear deterrence is the bedrock, the most important priority of the Pentagon. So how are we doing? Well, we've got some problems, and here are four major ones. First, I believe, as does a bipartisan majority in Congress, that we must maintain and modernize our nuclear triad, but these programs are dangerously behind and over budget. Second, NNSA and DoD have lost key personnel due to Musk and Doge before they reversed course, and they tried to get people back. Morale is terrible, and this only makes the work that is already behind even more difficult. Third, even if we get our efforts back on track, all of our modernization plans are based on one major nuclear adversary, not two. So not only are we behind, we don't even know if what we're building will be sufficient for deterrence. Fourth, the President's Golden Dome threatens to throw all of this out the window along with a theory of deterrence that has kept us safe since 1945. There's a direct tie between our nuclear deterrence posture and what is being proposed for Golden Dome by President Trump. When President Bush pulled us out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty, a new arms race, both conventional and nuclear, began. While we developed modest missile defenses to defend against rogue nations, Russia and China, never believing that was our real intent, developed capabilities to evade our systems, including destabilizing weapons like the nuclear-tipped torpedo that could take out any coastal city, a space-based nuclear weapon that could wipe out all of low Earth orbit, including Golden Dome, not to mention hypersonics, where we are playing catch-up. Now, last week, some members of the majority quoted the Bipartisan Strategic Posture Commission as rationale for supporting Golden Dome, and I would like to highlight a major caveat that was omitted in their remarks. Everything they said was contingent on the capabilities being determined, quote, feasible. But you have to go to the footnotes to understand what the Commission means by that term, because even I have never questioned if the concept is technically feasible. But on page 134 of the report, it says, by feasible, the Commission means technically and financially sound, as well as based on sound policy deliberations. And this is where my concern lies. We have not seen any of the work to determine if this concept is even feasible as defined by the Commission, yet we are throwing billions of dollars at it already. The Congressional Budget Office, in response to our colleagues on the Senate Strategic Forces Subcommittee's bipartisan request, just released its updated cost estimate for deploying space-based interceptors. The 20-year cost ranged from $160 to $542 billion. We all know which end of that range will be right, and that hardly seems fiscally sound. Todd Harrison, a senior fellow at the American Enterprise Institute, a conservative think tank, recently said, while the costs have come down and the technology has matured, the physics of space-based interceptors has not changed. This also questions the technical soundness of a system that the Russians could eliminate with the push of one button. Most importantly, multiple witnesses to this subcommittee have admitted that there have not been any significant policy deliberations on what the impact of Golden Dome would have on strategic stability. Look, it's dangerous when you have a president who doesn't know what he's doing and a Congress that's unwilling to question him. And the stakes are so much higher with nuclear weapons. There are only two possible explanations for what's going on. One is that America has had deterrence all wrong. And a guy who's most experienced at bankrupting casinos is so brilliant with deterrence theory that he's corrected something that every nuclear theorist, every Pentagon planner, and every administration, including his first, had gotten wrong. Or perhaps Donald Trump decided he wanted the gold-plated version of something his friend has, so here we are. Which do we think is more likely? These are important questions and concerns to examine in a serious, thoughtful, intellectually rigorous, and bipartisan manner. That's what we have to do, because the future of our country, the bedrock of our strategic stability and security, and the lives of our kids could well depend upon it. So thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Thank the ranking member. We'll now move to opening statements from our witnesses. I would note that your prepared statements will be made part of the record, but you will each have 5 minutes to make some opening remarks. Ms. Robbins, let's begin with you.
Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and members of the subcommittee, thank you for the opportunity to provide an update on the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration. NNSA performs vital national defense, safety, and security missions that cannot be accomplished anywhere else in the United States government. With the support of this administration and Congress, NNSA is executing these missions in an increasingly complex and volatile international environment. Over the last year, NNSA continued delivering modernized nuclear weapons while sustaining the current stockpile. Our defense nuclear nonproliferation programs work to minimize and secure nuclear and radioactive materials around the globe. NNSA's Naval Reactors Program, which celebrated its 75th anniversary last year, continues to ensure the U.S. Navy's competitive warfighting edge and secure the sea-based leg of the nuclear triad with unmatched submarine technology. I am proud to report on some of NNSA's recent accomplishments and activities in support of our national security. NNSA is executing an expanded program of record to meet existing and emerging Department of Defense requirements. We are simultaneously delivering 7 major stockpile modernization programs, which are at different stages of design, engineering, and production. The modernization programs cover all 3 legs of the nuclear triad and introduce new options and capabilities for the President to strengthen deterrence in response to an ever-changing threat environment. Meeting a significant milestone, the first War Reserve diamond-stamped plutonium pit for the W-87-1 warhead was produced at Los Alamos National Laboratory in October. Last December, the B-61 Mod 12 Life Extension Program completed the last production unit. The successful execution of this program saw the consolidation of multiple B-61 variants with updated non-nuclear components and improved safety, reliability, and accuracy that will extend its service life for at least 20 years. Additionally, NNSA anticipates achieving the first production unit for the B-61 Mod 13 later this month, almost a full year ahead of schedule. The W-88 Alt-370 maintained 100% on-time deliveries to the U.S. Navy and is scheduled to complete production by the end of the fiscal year 2025. The W-80-4 program remains aligned with the Air Force schedule for the long-range standoff missile, and we expect a first production unit in September 2027. The W-87-1 is currently scheduled to begin production in the early 2030s. The W-93 remains on track for production starting in the mid-2030s. In response to congressional direction, NNSA stood up a SLCM-N program office last year. A warhead down selection decision for SLCM-N was recently considered by the Nuclear Weapons Council, and we have identified the W-80 family as the most suitable warhead. In the coming year, NNSA will continue to coordinate closely with the Department of Defense to ensure that the pace of our stockpile modernization efforts aligns with the platform delivery schedules. Recognizing that deterrence is not static, NNSA must also design new materials, processes, and systems for future stockpile needs, certify new and modified components and systems as they enter the stockpile, and continue to assess the stockpile's current condition annually. Our world-class science and technology capabilities allow us to perform this work and ensure our stockpile is safe, secure, reliable, and effective without requiring underground nuclear explosive testing. As Secretary Wright has said, AI is the next Manhattan Project. The enterprise is taking decisive action to leverage advantages offered by AI in service to the nuclear deterrence and non-proliferation missions. Last year, Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory installed El Capitan, our first exascale computing system for national security. With the ability to perform 2.79 quintillion calculations per second at peak performance, it has been benchmarked as the world's fastest supercomputer and is currently running classified full 3D nuclear weapon simulations in support of nuclear stockpile stewardship activities. As NNSA's workload increases, the enterprise continues to advance extensive infrastructure modernization efforts required to meet today's needs and provide enduring, flexible, and resilient capabilities. We look forward to talking to you more about those infrastructure modernization activities.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. Dr. Vann, you're recognized.
Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and the distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for allowing me to testify before you here today. And sir, thank you for your kind words. It's my pleasure to join my colleagues to discuss the matters relating to our U.S. nuclear deterrent, which underpins all of our national defense priorities. And as President Trump and Secretary Hegseth have stated, the United States will achieve peace through strength by rebuilding our military and reestablishing deterrence. And nuclear weapons provides a unique deterrence effect that no other element of the U.S. military power can replace. And our nation must continue to field flexible and a modern deterrent. These capabilities are critical to the continued safety and security of our American people and our allies and partners, both now and in the future. And the department continues to prioritize nuclear modernization and sustainment of the 3 legs of the triad as well as our nuclear command and control systems and our supplemental capabilities for the program of record. Additionally, the department supports the effort of the Department of Energy's National Nuclear Security Administration to recapitalize, sustain, and operate that nuclear enterprise. The President's 26 top-line budget request of $1 trillion for the Department of Defense includes a prioritization for our nuclear modernization efforts as well as our sustainment efforts. The Department of Defense remains staunchly committed to the viability of our U.S. nuclear deterrent in response to an unprecedented security environment with multiple nuclear challengers who have not followed our lead as a responsible nuclear power. And our nation will soon encounter a fundamentally different global setting than it has ever experienced. And the DoD is acutely aware of the significant challenges that we face and recognizes that action needs to take place. And the decisions that we make as a nation today will have profound ramifications for decades to come. I do want to acknowledge the creation of the Assistant Secretary of Defense for Nuclear Deterrence, Chemical and Biological Defense Policy and Programs, referred to in the department as the ASD-ND-CBD, who will ultimately be at the forefront of the DoD's efforts to sustain and modernize that nuclear deterrent. This new position not only will serve as a key point of accountability to Secretary Hegseth, but also to Congress on this critical national security mission. And in addition to serving as a senior advisor to the Secretary of Defense and the Deputy Secretary on broad range of issues associated with both our nuclear deterrent as well as our chem-bio defense programs, it will also serve as the staff director for our Nuclear Weapons Council, or the NWC, a key coordination position across this nuclear enterprise. Today, we face an unprecedented strategic environment with China and Russia modernizing and diversifying their nuclear forces at breathtaking pace, and the Democratic People's Republic of Korea continuing to demonstrate its ability to execute strategic attack. They are increasing our level of coordination and cooperation, which raises the possibility of simultaneous conflicts with multiple nuclear-armed adversaries. And our adversaries have thus far given no indication of arms control interest, and with the expiration of the New START Treaty in February of 26, the United States may face a historical moment in the nuclear era without a major nuclear arms limitation agreement in place. And while the evolving geopolitical environment remains at the forefront of our minds, we also recognize that our adversaries aren't our only challenge, right? We're faced with unprecedented set of cross-cutting risks. We're simultaneously sustaining the current nuclear stockpile and trying to modernize at a scale that we haven't seen in over 40 years. And these risks that we find reside not only in our industrial base, but also with our workforce, in supply chain security, and even in cybersecurity threats that are requiring action in the near term in order to make lasting effects across the deterrent. So in response to this, the department continues to determine and implement necessary actions to address that risk, as we acknowledge that the nuclear modernization program of record is necessary, but may be insufficient for the realities of the security environment we will face in the future. And we recognize that we must be flexible, efficient, and adaptable to that evolving geopolitical landscape in order to defend our homeland and provide options to the Secretary and to the President to bolster that deterrence. The department is focused on mitigating those potential risks and ensuring that there's no gaps in our capabilities from that transition of our legacy forces to our modern systems. And there are bound to be challenges with the complexity of the system that we have. However, the department remains really committed to delivering. The Nuclear Weapons Council is acutely aware of this challenge and is working to discuss, enact, and identify, mitigate risks to ensure that we continue to have a safe, secure, credible, and effective nuclear deterrent in today and into the future. I just want to thank the members of the committee for its longstanding support of this mission, and I would like to acknowledge my colleagues at this table, as well as the folks within the nuclear enterprise who are tirelessly working this issue day to day. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Vann. And back again before our committee since last week. Here we're ready for round two from Ms. Yaffe.
Thank you. I'm glad to be back. Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of the subcommittee, thank you for inviting me to testify before you today on the Department of Defense's nuclear forces and atomic energy defense activities. I'm honored to appear alongside my distinguished colleagues. The strategic threats to the nation continue to mount. China, Russia, and North Korea are fielding more advanced missiles with greater ranges and in greater numbers to provide the means for strategic level attack against the homeland, including nuclear and non-nuclear options. They are rapidly modernizing, expanding, and diversifying their nuclear forces, incorporating advances in warhead, delivery systems, and the supporting command and control systems. Iran, meanwhile, continues to engage in concerning behavior related to enrichment and the pursuit of nuclear-capable missiles. These developments pose an increasing threat to the United States and our allies and partners. The nation's nuclear forces and supporting infrastructure remain the foundation of deterrence and defense against the growing threats to the homeland and our interests abroad. We continue to affirm and support the full-scope modernization of U.S. nuclear forces and nuclear command, control, and communication capabilities, as well as the modernization of the complementary defense industrial base and the Department of Energy's nuclear production enterprise. The United States must deliver the nuclear modernization program of record while continuing to sustain legacy systems to avoid a deterrent shortfall and to mitigate risk. The United States is also committed to investing in extended deterrence and assurance by fielding flexible nuclear forces suited for regional deterrence and working with allies and partners to provide concrete, non-nuclear capabilities to support U.S. deterrence operations. To that end, the President's FY26 budget request for DoD will, among other things, prioritize investments to modernize the nation's nuclear deterrent alongside efforts to defend the homeland, deter Chinese aggression in the Indo-Pacific, and revitalize the U.S. defense industrial base. However, we recognize that the current nuclear modernization program was conceived at a time where we did not contemplate a world with multiple nuclear challengers who are uninterested in arms control. The multiple nuclear challenger problem that we confront places demands on our deterrence and defense posture that no U.S. presidential administration has had to face since the first nuclear weapon was developed. While each challenger presents individualized risks to the United States, the simultaneity and growing collaboration between challengers forces us to think in new ways about what it takes to maintain stable deterrence, provide extended deterrence to our allies, deter opportunistic aggression in the event deterrence fails against any one challenger, and manage increasingly complex escalation dynamics. In assessing how to address the evolving security environment, it may be necessary to adapt current U.S. force capability, posture, composition, or size. The Department will continuously evaluate whether adjustments should be made and, when appropriate, make recommendations to the President. The Department is firmly committed to making the necessary policies and investments in our nuclear forces to deter our adversaries and, if deterrence fails, to achieve our presidential objectives. The mission requires sufficient and consistent funding and support. Thank you for your dedication to our mission and our service members, including your support for the nuclear deterrent and the reconciliation process, and thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, Ms. Yaffe. Now we'll turn to General Gebara.
Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, members of the House Armed Services Subcommittee for Strategic Forces, thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today. Along with my teammates across the Department of Defense, Department of Energy, the airmen and guardians of the Department of the Air Force work tirelessly to ensure the United States maintains the nuclear deterrent our nation demands. Their unwavering professionalism to restore deterrence and rebuild U.S. nuclear forces ensures the foundation of our national security remains strong. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank the Congress for its sustained support to ensure that the U.S. nuclear enterprise has the resources to meet all current and future challenges. Our mission, to maintain a safe, secure, and effective nuclear deterrent, is as vital today as it was at the dawn of the nuclear age. The United States, our allies and partners, confront an unprecedented strategic environment. China is rapidly expanding its nuclear and conventional forces as part of a broader project to reshape the Indo-Pacific and the international order. China is projected to have over 1,000 nuclear warheads by 2030, effectively adding the entire nuclear stockpile of the next largest existing power every few years. The nuclear activities of Russia, North Korea, and Iran further complicate deterrence. Now, I want to emphasize this security landscape is not simply a return to the Cold War. Instead, the emergence of multiple nuclear threats represents a new and fundamentally different strategic environment, one that has never been seen before. In this emerging world, sustaining a credible nuclear deterrent remains a top Department of the Air Force priority mission. U.S. nuclear forces underpin our national security. Each element of the triad provides unique and complementary attributes. Collectively, the triad offers the President flexibility and resilience to deter our nuclear challengers, assure our allies and partners, and should deterrence fail, achieve the President's objectives. To prepare for this challenge, the Departments of Defense and the Air Force are undertaking a full-scope recapitalization of current systems and supporting infrastructure to deliver modern and effective deterrence capabilities. Our program of record includes the B-21 and B-52 bombers, the long-range standoff weapon, the Sentinel intercontinental ballistic missile system, nuclear certification for the F-35, construction of advanced weapons generation facilities, and nuclear command and control and communications. This is a once-in-a-generation effort that cuts across every aspect of the nuclear enterprise. As we modernize, it is imperative that we continue to sustain current systems to ensure there is no gap in our nation's strategic deterrence missions. Your continued support of this years-long effort is critical to our ability to restore deterrence and rebuild our military for the challenges of the 21st century. A strong, credible nuclear force is not an option, it is a necessity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you, General. Admiral Wolfe, you're recognized.
Chairman Desjardins, Ranking Member Moulton, and distinguished members of this committee, it is an honor to be here and a privilege to continue representing the service members, civilians, and families of the Navy's strategic systems programs. I'd like to thank this committee and Congress for its continued support in providing us with the resources required to execute our assigned mission. I have submitted my posture statement for the record. I'll begin by assuring you that the Navy's nuclear forces, the bedrock of our national security, are safe, secure, effective, and credible. As the Navy command that provides cost-effective, safe, and secure sea-based strategic deterrent solutions, Strategic Systems Programs is entrusted to provide cradle-to-grave life cycle support to 3 critical programs: the Trident II D5 Strategic Weapons System, Navy Hypersonics, the Conventional Prime Strike Program, and the Nuclear Armed Sea Launched Cruise Missile nuclear programs. These are 3 of our highest priority acquisition programs, and with your support, they ensure the Navy is delivering peace through strength. Strategic Systems Programs ensures the highest levels of readiness and modernization for the Trident Strategic Weapons Systems, which underlies our national strategy to deter any adversary who threatens the United States, our allies, or our interests. The U.S. nuclear triad's most survivable leg is provided by this sea-based strategic deterrent. The ballistic missile submarine force represents a substantial portion of our nation's deployed nuclear warheads, providing an unyielding foundation for assured response against any adversary. The Navy's strategic deterrent stands at a critical juncture. To maintain our advantage in the face of evolving threats, we must prioritize the modernization of our nuclear infrastructure and industrial base. A strong domestic industrial base is the foundation of a credible deterrent. Using resources authorized by this committee, Strategic Systems Programs is actively working to revitalize this vital national asset, ensuring the timely production and delivery of critical strategic weapons systems components while fostering American jobs and technological superiority. Our modernization needs cannot succeed without investing in research and development, the critical skills for our workforce, and the facilities needed to produce, sustain, and certify our nuclear systems. Our infrastructure is also at an inflection point. Existing facilities are reaching their 30-year recapitalization windows as we enter into a once-in-a-generational transition of both the Trident strategic weapons system and the ballistic missile submarine platform. In accordance with the fiscal year 2024 NDAA, Navy established a SLCM program office at Strategic Systems Programs in March of 2024. Over the past year, Strategic Systems Programs has focused on standing up this program office and conducting the assessments needed to deliver a weapons system that meets warfighter needs. The SLCM program is focused on achieving a milestone decision in FY26 and continuing program assessments to buy down technical and programmatic risk. Executing this program requires careful balancing of resources to ensure existing critical Navy and Air Force programs of record are not adversely impacted. Strategic Systems Program's mission, strategic deterrence, is critical to this nation. It is the foundation of the National Defense Strategy and is a top priority of the Department of Defense. Based on the success of the Trident program, Strategic Systems Programs has also been tasked with rapidly developing and producing the Navy's first hypersonic weapons system, Conventional Prompt Strike, along with the Army's long-range hypersonic weapons system. In order to accomplish our mission, Strategic Systems Programs relies on a relatively small number of trained, skilled employees, and it is critical that my command is able to appropriately staff its workforce with these highly specialized technical experts. People are as fundamental to our nuclear deterrent as the strategic weapons systems itself. As the 14th Director of Strategic Systems Programs, I have absolute faith and confidence in the safety, security, effectiveness, and credibility of our Navy's strategic deterrent due to the proficiency and the professionalism of the dedicated service members and civilians who have made strategic deterrence their life's work and committed themselves to our mission. With continued congressional support and stable on-time funding, the Navy will continue to effectively defend our nation and preserve peace for future generations. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today.
Thank you, Admiral, and thank all our witnesses for their testimony. We'll now turn to member questioning. I'll begin by recognizing myself for 5 minutes. Admiral Wolfe, you gave quite a bit of description on the SLCM program, but would you mind going into some more detail and updating us on the progress you're making with the SLCM program? And also, are there any changes we could make here in Congress that would allow you to go even faster?
Yes, sir. So as I said, we've stood up the program office. We are looking at what the options available are. My colleague talked about the warhead down selection, which was a major milestone that we needed to achieve, and we're on track for that. We continue to do all of the things to understand what it's going to take us to get to a milestone decision next year. So all of that is in the works. What we're starting to realize is, based on particularly what INDOPACOM and STRATCOM are asking for, we're looking to understand if there's any additional acquisition flexibilities that we can get to be able to more rapidly move through the acquisition process to deliver a capability, not just on time, but to accelerate it to continue to provide the warfighter the things that we're looking for.
And can you elaborate just a little bit on what that capability brings to the table for us?
Yes, sir. It brings another option to our decision makers to deter our adversaries. It is an underlay for our triad, and certainly it brings a regional weapon and a deterrent that we just don't have today.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins, NNSA has proven it can deploy capabilities rapidly to meet the warfighter needs. The W76-2 and the B61-13 are examples of this. Has NNSA looked at institutionalizing this type of approach and establishing a dedicated rapid acquisition pathway for developing and deploying tailored capabilities?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, NNSA is looking at that. We believe it would be beneficial to have the capability to rapidly develop and deploy new systems for the warfighter and for the Commander of Strategic Command and the President. We are looking at, as you noted, with the W76-2 and the B61-13, we were able to turn those from authorization to first production unit in less than 2 years. And we are looking to be able to stand up the capability to do that with new systems. So the W76-2 and the B61-13 used our existing production line and qualified components. We would like to create the capability to do that with new components and a production line that's not already in the works.
Okay, and thank you. And Dr. Vann, is this something the Nuclear Weapons Council has looked at, and would this help address emergent deterrence challenges?
Excuse me. Yes, sir. The NWC is actually actively focused on looking at ways to try to tailor our joint acquisition guidelines that help enable some of these rapid capabilities in response to emergent needs. The NWC acknowledges that business as usual is not going to suffice in today's environment and is committed to trying to break through acquisition barriers, whether they're within the Department of Defense or across the nuclear enterprise.
Okay, and can you update us on the progress implementing Section 1621 of the FY25 Defense Authorization Bill?
Yes, sir. So thank you for the acknowledgement of this position. The department is taking the implementation of the 1621 language very seriously, and of course has requested some additional time to ensure that the Secretary of Defense and some other additional administration leadership have the opportunity to review all of the options and ultimately ensure that this position is empowered to meet both the letter and the spirit of the law.
All right, and thank you. I think this is something that needs to be carried out expeditiously. I will now turn to our ranking member, Mr. Moulton, for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I'll begin exactly where you did with Flickaman. And Vice Admiral Wolfe, appreciate the conversations that we have had about this and the Navy's evolving position on the program in general. But I know that one of the great concerns that the Navy continues to have is the impact of the attack submarine force, including impact on operations, the new requirements for training, and the new infrastructure required to support the operations of carrying nuclear weapons. So can you share how the Navy is working with STRATCOM and the combatant commanders to shape concepts of operation and reduce the impact to a fleet that's already oversubscribed?
Yes, sir. So as you said, that really is between the combatant commanders and the fleet, that concept of operations, how we're going to operate that. Part of what you said, and we've had, as you said, we've had discussions about what's the impact to the SSN fleet and how do we minimize that. That's part of what we've been trying to do over this last year, is to really understand what is that range of options where we can work with the combatant commander and the warfighter to get a concept of operations that allows us to minimize that impact. Part of what we are trying to design based on that is to just get at that. And in this environment, that's about all we can talk about, but we continue down that path to understand how to deploy a capability that's going to meet the combatant commander and minimize that impact.
Great, thank you very much. And as I noted in my opening statement, I have serious concerns that the administration is not treating the enormously consequential decisions regarding deterrence strategy and policy with the rigor that they deserve. So a couple questions on that point. Lieutenant General Gebara and Vice Admiral Wolfe, you're both career experts on nuclear deterrence. Have either of you spoken with the White House regarding nuclear deterrence, particularly the implications of potential changes to policy that might impact our nuclear deterrence?
Sir, I'll go ahead and start. So I personally have not done so. It would not be typical for me to do so based on the position I'm in. I would expect that advice to go from the combatant commanders and the Joint Chiefs to the President.
It's also not typical to suddenly change 70 years of policy on a whim, so I thought they might ask. Admiral Wolfe?
Sir, I would give the same answer as the general. I have not had any personal discussions. That is something we'd work up through policy and through OSD.
Thank you. Dr. Vann, Ms. Yaffe, have you had any discussions about nuclear deterrence policy with the White House?
So, sir, I can say that I have not personally had any conversations at this point, but that would normally go
Ms.
through
Yaffe?
policy.
So the policy office, certainly when the Golden Dome EO came out, had a number of conversations with the White House to understand intent and make sure that the architecture recommendations were in line with the policy intent. We expect ongoing conversations on the deterrence elements.
Mm-hmm. What do you understand to be the new deterrence policy? How is this going to work, and how are our adversaries going to respond, since that's how deterrence works? Your adversary gets a vote.
That's right, sir. The guidance and certainly the intent of the Golden Dome is to strengthen our deterrence by denial approach to deterrence strategy, to make sure that the adversary does not believe that they can affect their objectives through a cruise or a missile attack, cruise ballistic hypersonic attack on the United States. It's meant to send the signal we will not take that attack. We also, of course, continue a deterrence through cost and position strategy with our nuclear triad.
Mm-hmm. Even though you admitted last week in the hearing that Golden Dome will not protect against several of the novel delivery systems like the nuclear-tipped torpedo, it's not designed to stop a nuclear-tipped torpedo coming into Los Angeles Harbor, for example.
Right, the priority is on aerial threats and missiles.
Right. So we're sort of accepting that even though we claim deterrence by denial, we know that several adversary weapons can get through.
I mean, this is where the deterrence through cost and position strategy comes in, is to make sure that the adversary understands that the range of attacks may face a cost that they are not prepared to bear.
Well, that's back to the theory of deterrence, right?
Correct. I mean, I don't think anybody's walked away from the theory of deterrence through cost and position. It's additive with deterrence through denial through the Golden Dome.
Yeah, except if you factor in what they might do in response. Have there been any discussions about that?
There have certainly been discussions, and as you noted in your opening statement, China and Russia have continued to pursue a breadth of capabilities despite our prior missile defense not being oriented toward them.
Yeah. Well, I hope these conversations continue, and they are actually backed up by not just ideas, but by numbers, because the CBO numbers that just came out were quite concerning. I don't have time to get to this because I want to respect the time for other members, but there are a lot of concerns that both the chairman and I have raised with implications for our workforce, the cuts from Musk and Doge, and the implications for morale. And so I'll send a couple questions for the record for you to respond on that front. We know how important people are to this process. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, thank the ranking member. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Bacon.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Ranking Member. Strategic deterrence is job one, most important mission we have. I know the last 20 years we were focused on Iraq and Afghanistan, so we diverted some resources there, so we have catching up to do, and I think that's why the reconciliation bill is positioned the way it is, at least for the military part, because we got to catch up and take care of our troops. My first question is to Dr. Vann, perhaps General Gebara and Admiral Wolfe, but it's about nuclear command and control and particularly survivability. You know, for 29 years, we flew an airborne command post 24/7, always a plane airborne with a general. And if the White House was hit, the Pentagon was hit, Stratcom was hit, there's a command authority airborne that could take command of our nuclear resources and respond. It was all about nuclear deterrence. Russia and China needed to know, or Soviet Union at the time actually, that no matter what they did, we could respond back. We stopped doing that in the early 90s, and then we moved the mission to the Navy at Tinker. And now we're hearing that the Navy wants to adjust that airplane to a TACAMO C-130 and walking away from the looking glass portion of this mission. So we have a need still, I believe, and it's more critical now than ever because we can be hit within 15 minutes from China and Russia. And so that means our survivable nodes are they're more important than they ever were. So Dr. Vann, what's your vision for the future of the Looking Glass mission?
Yes, sir. Thank you for asking the question. Of course, the nuclear command, control, and communications is absolutely critical. It is the fourth leg of the triad, as it were, and you would know better than even I do on how important that really is. So recently, there was a meeting held inside the department with the NLCS looking at that mission and supporting transfer of that mission to the Air Force. So I'll ask General Gebara to kind of add into this. My understanding is that's now going to a JROC Council discussion, and if supported, it will be officially transferred over to the Air Force and stood up as a mission set. So, General Gebara, I don't know if you have anything else.
Congressman, thank you for the question. So just to clarify, we have not, the department has not backed away from that mission at all. We do that 24/7, 365. I personally have 58 missions on AVNCAP, the Airborne Command Post, to do that mission. And those crews are very proud of what they do, and they continue. The Navy has moved out on the C-130 model for their TACAMO mission, which has opened the question of the Airborne Command Post mission and which service does that and which service does not. And so that's what Dr. Vann was referring to in terms of the Joint Requirements Oversight Council will take that on. They'll make the best decision on who is the best service to do that. And then if the Air Force is that service, then we will move out on that program. The commitment of the Navy has been that they are going to continue that mission until properly relieved. And,
Right.
And so the last thing I'll say on that is the Air Force, as you know, has moved out in establishing the 95th Wing, which is our new command and control wing to get after this, not just nuclear command and control, but exquisite forms of command and control throughout our department that need to have full-time attention. It's not an additional duty of an officer. There needs to be a wing commander that is looking at this every day.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. I think what General Gebara said is just right. As a matter of fact, on Monday, we had our Navy Nuclear Deterrent Mission Oversight Council, and this particular topic came up, and the Navy is looking at how do they continue to meet the things they're being asked to do until that ultimate decision is made and those responsibilities move.
What I'm hearing, though, the mission is still vitally important. We'll have to find a way to transition it. Another thing I want to just state my position, and most people know it, doing a 15-minute alert, I don't think works anymore. We did 29 years of 24/7 airborne, Granted, we got the peace dividend when the Soviet Union fell. And I think it was smart what we did in the early 1990s, but now we're back, well, I think back to the future. We got Russia's more threatening as ever, and China is going to match our force in nuclear weapons. And a 15-minute response time, I don't think is adequate with the weapons that are here now, but also the future weapons that we're looking at. So I hope we're going to look at some kind of 24/7 capability that ensures that we have a command mode that cannot be targeted. And again, we never want to use it, but it's for deterrence. I was going to ask, General, for you to give us some success stories on the Sentinel, but I'm out of time. So maybe I'll come back later. Thank you. I yield.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Carbajal.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you to all the witnesses for being here today. Dr. Vann, thank you for your service. I wish you the best in your next chapter. But I got to start by, if I get my thoughts here, by taking this opportunity to highlight that Secretary Pete Hegseth's actions over the past several months have led to a complete lack of confidence, in his ability to be the Secretary of Defense by many members on this subcommittee. I don't even want to imagine a world in which he shared secrets, about our nuclear weapons details or plans in an unclassified chat room. I have called on Secretary Hegseth to resign, and I hope he'll heed that advice. With that, let me start by saying I read an article yesterday with the headline, Air Force now expects Sentinel ICBM will predominantly need new silos. It is my understanding the Air Force came up with this requirement on its own 10 years ago. I think one of the first details to iron out when designing a next generation of silo-based ICBM systems would be determining how these missiles would be launched. General Gebara, can you speak to why it took the Air Force 10 years to realize new silos would be required for the Sentinel? And how does this affect the cost and timeline?
Sir, thank you for the question. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to it. So the initial Sentinel program that came under review last year was designed to utilize the existing silos that exist today that were built in the early 60s, and then the Minuteman III missile, which is what we have on alert today, was put into that infrastructure from the early 60s. There was an attempt and an assumption that reusing silos would be the most cost-effective way of going. As we went through reviews last year as part of the recertification of the program, as we determined it was essential to national security, there was an effort made to look at all the areas that we may need to restructure to be the most cost-effective as possible. What you're seeing in the news recently is, in my view, a positive interaction in that restructure, in that we have determined that it is more cost-effective and more timely to go with new silos, in most cases, predominantly new silos, than it is to put the money and time into refurbing old silos. So this is just one example of the effort to restructure that our Air Force has been going through over the last 9 months.
And the cost factor?
Congressman, so we believe this is more cost-effective than the original plan of reusing the silos.
Thank you. As Sentinel's timeline continues to slip, maintaining Minuteman III is increasingly important to our national security. General Gebara, what steps is the Air Force taking to ensure the Minuteman remains viable until replacement is ready?
Sir, thank you for the question. So absolutely, the issue of nuclear forces is that our nuclear forces need to be just as good on their last alert, last patrol, last sortie as they were on their first. There absolutely has to be safe, secure, effective, reliable forces. The reality is the Minuteman III is going to be on alert longer than we originally anticipated it being on alert, and so we have to get after that. We have added monies into the sustainment for our missile forces and the surrounding infrastructure. That has been looked at through our OSD teammates as well, and they agree that adequate dollars have been spent on that. We have also added engineering support into the program office to get after what are those unknown unknowns. So I could talk to this subcommittee with charts and charts of the various widgets that need to be replaced and the efforts we're getting after to do that. But it's the unknown unknowns that will of course get after it. And so we're working hard to identify those early, and that's where we are on Minuteman right now. We continue to test the Minuteman system through periodic shots out of Vandenberg, as you know from your district. Members of this subcommittee, some members of the subcommittee have witnessed that personally. I took some of you to witness that last February. We do that periodically. And that is very critical to ensure that you can do everything you want in PowerPoint, but at the end of the day, it's important to test to make sure these things will stay safe, secure, and effective.
Thank you. I'm out of time. I have a few more questions that I'll submit for the record. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes a gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Messmer.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the witnesses for being here. Admiral Wolfe, it's good to see you again, and I would like to ask you some questions about the SLCMN program. Do you agree the most important operational requirement for SLCMN is to provide the President a credible response option after a nuclear event, and if employed by the President, how important is it that SLCMN missile survives an enemy's missile defense system?
Well, certainly, sir, any system that we provide in the Navy has to be survivable. That is the whole reason why the Navy is in the deterrent business. So I agree with those statements, yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Has that importance been given to you from the Navy as a formal requirement for the SLCMN development?
Yes, sir. We've got that in addition to a whole bunch of other requirements, but yes, sir.
Thank you, excellent. When Secretary Hegseth asked how he would make the SLCMN program go fast, he responded, competition. Will you develop the SLCMN missile system through open competition?
Sir, that is based on the current program of record. Yes, we've actually already done an industry day. We're already looking at how we get multiple vendors into this to understand what the concepts are and what the viability of those concepts will be. And that's what's actually going to help get us informed to a milestone decision next year.
Okay, good. Underwater launch testing is critical to both CPS and SLCMN. That testing will take place at Naval Surface Warfare Center Crane in my district. How soon would you like to see that testing occur?
Well, sir, as you know, since it's in your district, we'd like to have that facility ready to go as rapidly as we can. And of course, we talk about using that facility for Sea Launched Cruise Missile, but it was originally envisioned that it was going to be for conventional prompt strike hypersonic. So in the effort to be lean and efficient, we're going to look at that to be a multi-use facility. And so as we continue to push both of these programs forward, that facility will become more critical for us to be able to do that testing.
Okay, thank you. Do you think you have the resources you need to perform testing when required?
Yes, sir, I do.
Okay. I've heard reports of the desires to field something sooner than 2034. Is it your understanding that currently appropriated funds and those considered by this committee in the proposed reconciliation bill are for the ACAT-1 program as established by Congress?
I do, sir, but that's why I'm also asking and looking for discussions on additional flexibility to be able to have us do multiple things at the same time.
Excellent. That's what I was hoping you'd say. Can you confirm that if you decide to pursue any early capability, that such an effort would not interfere with developing the missiles needed for the SLCMN program of record in IOC?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. In terms of managing your command, do you have the facilities and people needed to run all three of your major programs?
We are in a build-up right now of the workforce, sir. To your point, if you look at what this program has taken on in the last 4 to 5 years, we need to grow our workforce within an SAP to be able to meet the demand signal for all three of those critical programs.
Okay, thank you. Are you aware of the production challenges facing our current intermediate range missile programs, both in terms of capacity and lead times?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay. Do you believe you can meet the 2034 IOC timeline established by Congress?
Based on the current plan we have, yes, sir, I do.
Perfect. All right, thank you. Ms. Robinson, I'm very interested in the potential for small nuclear reactors to fully power our military installations. My understanding is there is an urgent need for HALEU to support the advanced reactor industry in the U.S. For U.S. energy dominance. HALEU can be made from downbleeding a small portion of NNSA highly enriched uranium stockpiles. What is your view on whether that's a viable method to increase HALEU supply to support our administration's goals of rapidly deploying advanced reactors without impacting our other nuclear programs?
Thank you for the question, sir. We have been providing some we have been providing some highly enriched uraniums for downblending to HALEU. We have done pretty much at this point what we can with the materials that we have in hand to do. We are going to need as a nation the ability to enrich uranium to be able to power these small modular reactors and advanced reactors.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
And the gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Whitesides.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let me start by saying that I think we are all feeling very lucky that we have professionals like yourselves working on these issues. So my gratitude to you all for your service to the country. This hearing is especially timely. The committee and the offices that you all head are dealing with a dramatically changing strategic environment. That's one of the reasons why I felt the $189 million cut to the NNSA's non-proliferation budget in the CR was so concerning. Now, in my opinion, is precisely the wrong time to be cutting that programming. Compounding the problem, we add the 177 NNSA employees that were summarily fired in February. Now reports indicate that as many as 500 more might be on the chopping block. Between Russia, North Korea, Iran, I'm at a loss to explain or understand how cutting non-proliferation, nuclear security, and inspections serves any of our national security interests. Ms. Robbins, I hate to do this, but I'd like to ask you some questions about the personnel process through which the NNSA security inspectors were evaluated for firing. If you don't know the answer, you can give an approximation or come back for the record. Can you confirm the total number who were fired in February and the total number currently subject to termination?
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. On February 13, 177 probationary employees were terminated. On February the 14th, 150 of those employees were offered, the termination was rescinded, and they did return to employment.
Thank you. That answered my next question. So it sounds like a few have declined to be rehired. How many of those?
So the rescission was for 150 on February 14th. Following the California judge's order, the remaining 27 probationary employees were offered to return to employment. 3 declined. So out of the 177 that were terminated on February the 13th, only 3 have not returned.
Thank you. Can you describe for me the process of the firings? Were you able to advocate for waivers? Were any granted? And what advocacy before the action did you conduct within the administration?
The actions happened very quickly. I had asked if there was an opportunity to consider national security as being excluded from actions that were happening at the time. There was nothing provided to give me a national security waiver exemption. I proceeded with the terminations as directed, and with the following day, the secretary did rescind the terminations, directed me to rescind the terminations for 150 employees.
Thank you so much. I just want to underline that point, that the initial take of the DOJ team did not give an opportunity for national security to be considered. I find that remarkable. Anyway, turning my attention to General, I appreciated our conversation earlier today, and I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about the full range of modernization that's happening now. If you wouldn't be, I've got about 1 minute and 20 left, so you have a minute to do that.
Congressman, thank you very much. And there are a lot of exciting things happening in nuclear modernization right now, so a minute is going to go quick. But I would just say that there is an entire spectrum of things we're doing. So if you look from the one end of the spectrum, the LRSO missile in conjunction with the WD-4 that the NNSA is working on time, on budget, successful flight test this year with a new flight test imminent and doing very well. B-21 bomber, on time, on budget, exquisite 6th generation capability, best air vehicle in the planet Earth. If you look at our B6112, B6113, my NNSA teammate has already kind of talked about the successes of that early or on time, depending on which one you're talking about. As we go to the Mark 21A program, which will have the W-87-1 warhead in it, we've had successful flight tests on time, on budget. That is a weapon that will go on Sentinel, and so there will be a question as the Sentinel timing goes to the timing of the Mark 21A. We have reflowed that program so that we can do maximum testing on other rockets while we come up with the Sentinel as well. And then I'm happy to talk at further or in a different setting on the Sentinel as we're running out of time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Colorado, Mr. Crank, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon. Thanks to all of you for being here. In my mind, the rapid modernization of our nuclear forces should be one of our highest national security priorities. Unfortunately, some essential nuclear S&T technologies have been deprioritized in the past. And the good news is that new commercial efforts have emerged that may be able to assist the department in making up lost time. Admiral Wolfe, at a high level, can you share why Strategic Systems Programs is interested in reentry capabilities and what programs these efforts support?
Yes, sir. Certainly reentry programs, not just for the Navy, but for the Air Force as well. All of those technologies are absolutely critical when you look at what these weapons do. Certainly for the Navy, because of the W93 Mark 7, that's our new development program that we've got. We need those new technologies. We need to understand that manufacturing capability, all of those things that are going to go into us being able to deliver an entirely new capability in the mid-30s.
And then how will the department and SSP take advantage of higher cadence commercial reentry capabilities and opportunities to increase testing?
Yes, sir. So we're looking at every opportunity with commercial industry, and it's not just what we're doing on the nuclear side, but it's also on the hypersonic side as well. We have a program in the DoD called MACH-TB, where we're using commercial industry rockets to allow us to get more rapid testing at a quicker pace, more cost-effective, to be able to develop some of these technologies. Maybe not a full-up system like what the General and I ultimately deliver, but representative technologies that we would need to go into those systems. It allows us to use all these new capabilities to develop those quicker to prove that they're going to give us what we need.
Okay. And General, thank you. First of all, thanks for coming by the office and visiting earlier today. I enjoyed our discussion. I had a question for you on B-52 modernization. Obviously, I think concerning to all of us, obviously, that the B-52H, the Air Force plans to fly it until at least 2050, but it's going to take pretty significant upgrades to achieve that goal. Talk about, I guess, the Air Force investments for FY25 include a total of just over $1 billion in research and development, and then $194 million in procurement for the B-52 modernization program. Can you talk about that and the importance of it?
Yes, sir, absolutely. Thank you for the question. So the decision to go forward with the B-52 was a decision made several years ago in that we needed a high-low mix of capability. So it would not be cost-effective to the American taxpayer to have all high-end, exquisite things when many missions could be done with, the proverbial old truck that's paid for, and we just need to do some upgrades to it. And I don't mean to make light of the upgrades; they're significant, but a modernized B-52J is roughly a third as much cost as a brand new exquisite bomber. To do the B-52J program, we need new engines, we need a new radar. We're going to install some new nuclear command and control radios as those age out, and put new crypto technology on them, which is fleet-wide for all aircraft need that. So those are at various stages of development. The engines themselves, they required a little bit of redesign on the inlet as we did computer modeling. That redesign has been done. It's currently in wind tunnel testing, and we believe that we'll have a milestone decision later this year on that. The radar has seen some cost growth to it. We currently have been working through that to get that back a little bit more favorable to us. And then the nuclear command and control radio, of the two, one is going on the airplane with no problems. The other one has been a little bit more delayed than I would like to see. But overall, that kind of family of upgrades will happen as much in parallel as we can do, but they are different programs that are all going on the airplane. Again, this is something that while we are upgrading these airplanes, they are also operating in bomber task forces around the world. So there's a bomber task force of B-52s going on as we speak. And so these are things that we have to keep operating while we're upgrading at the same time. Thank you for the question, sir.
Yes, well, and I see that I'm out of time, but thank you. Thanks to all of you for being here, and thanks for what you continue to do for our country. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Yield back.
The gentleman yields. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Bell, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and Ranking Member. Thank you all for being here today. General, good to see you again. Good speaking to you. I enjoyed the conversation. Appreciate your time. We discussed the importance of ensuring continued investment and procurement for these vital programs. The last thing we all want is to be slowed down in our effort to modernize and fall behind our adversaries. From your perspective, what specific actions can we do here in Congress to strengthen our defense industrial base and ensure the timely delivery and production of advanced systems, weapons, and technologies so we can stay ahead of pacing threats such as China?
Congressman, thank you for the question. And so I think clearly the best thing we can do is provide stable laws, NDAs, and appropriations as best we can so that industry can react to that, because they're not going to react as well as they could if we're constantly shifting around. And so that's that. In terms of the flexibilities, we do appreciate flexible uses of money, as we've seen in kind of the reconciliation bill. There's good opportunities there. And then just the support of the Congress, which has been unwavering in nuclear deterrence space. I think all of us would agree that we've been very happy with and appreciative of the near unanimity of the Congress and the importance of this mission.
In your written testimony, you mentioned the growing alignment among China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea. How concerned should we be about operational or strategic coordination among these nuclear-armed or nuclear-aspiring states?
So clearly these countries are talking and they're collaborating. What I would say is we don't need to be scared. We do need to be prepared. We need to work as fast as we can to ensure our modernization programs come into the field as soon as possible. And we need to ensure the systems the legacy systems we have maintain safe, secure, reliable, and effective until we can do that handoff. And I'm not sure if Ms. Yaffe has anything to add to that.
Sir, I just echo that we remain very concerned about increased cooperation, to include on missile cooperation between Russia and North Korea, for example. We're watching it very closely, but this is a dynamic that we need to take into account as part of the overall multiple nuclear challenger strategic situation that we face.
Thank you. Your provided testimony, General, also highlights Iran's increased uranium enrichment and its continued development of ballistic missiles, missile capabilities, including potential ICBM range systems. Given these advancements in Iran's destabilizing regional activities, how is the Department of the Air Force preparing to address the potential emergence of Iran as a nuclear-armed state? And what implications would this have for U.S. deterrence strategy and force posture in the Middle East?
Sir, thank you for the question. And so the President has made it clear that it is United States policy that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon, and I'll pass that to my policy teammate in just a second. In terms of the Department of the Air Force and what we're doing, we are a back-to-basics military organization that needs to be lethal and ready to support the President's goals. And our view of that is if we keep that deterrent posture as strong as possible, that will give the President and the executive branch as much flexibility as possible to do what they need to do in a negotiation state and over to policy.
Thank you. Preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon is absolutely of paramount importance to the United States. The President has expressed his preference to negotiate a solution. The job of the Department of Defense is to provide credible options to support a whole-of-government strategy to deny Iran a nuclear weapon.
Thank you. And Admiral Wolfe, your submitted testimony highlights the vital and close cooperation that has existed and continues to exist between the United States and the United Kingdom on nuclear deterrence through agreements such as the Polaris Sales Agreement and the Mutual Defense Agreement. From your perspective, how vital is this partnership to the strength and credibility of our own sea-based deterrent? And are there any current challenges, political, industrial, or logistical, that could impact our ability to sustain this cooperation effectively into the next generation of strategic systems?
Yes, sir. Thanks for the question. So we work very closely with the United Kingdom on my side under the Polaris Sales Agreement. I think it's absolutely vital that we continue that partnership. Certainly what we do under the Polaris Sales Agreement, not only do they have benefit, we do as well. If you look at the cost share that they've got in many of the areas where we are working together, there's mutual benefit for all.
Okay. I think that's about my time. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Wilson, for 5 minutes.
And thank you very much, Dr. Chairman Desjarlais. And I want to wish Dr. Vann well. I'm so happy to see University of South Carolina graduates be so strong and be so competent and capable, so thank you. And congratulations on your 2023 Meritorious Presidential Rank Award, and then your background working at Nephron. My goodness, you, with Bill and Lou Kennedy, you have worked with real superstars, so I wish you well for the future. And any way that we can work with you in the future, please let me know. And with that in mind, too, we truly are thanking each of you for being here. And the world, sadly, is in a conflict we didn't choose between dictators with rule of gun invading democracies with rule of law. And indeed, Russia, war criminal Putin, and the Chinese Communist Party continue to expand and modernize their nuclear arsenals. And we know clearly that war criminal Putin is trying to recreate the failed Soviet Union. And with that, it's mass murder in Ukraine, but it was also the annexation of Belarus, denying Svetlana Alexievna, the actual president, to be able to be elected. We know that they never left with troops in Transnistria of Moldova. We know the annexation practically of South Ossetia, Abkhazia, of the Republic of Georgia, and the rigging of the elections in Georgia where Salome Zurabishvili should have been elected president. But over and over again, we've just got to understand that we're in a very, I think, critical situation. I'm just so happy for your leadership. Additionally, we know that North Korea is committed to increasing their nuclear warhead stockpile, and they are continuing their efforts at launching ICBMs to intimidate our allies of Japan and Korea and indeed the United States. And then we have the regime in Tehran, which is making every step to produce nuclear weapons. And we know, and I support very much, President Donald Trump's understanding that Iran must not ever have a nuclear weapon. We know that they never stopped developing an ICBM development, and that's only one reason for an ICBM. It's not for space research. It's truly to ultimately provide their goal of death to Israel, death to America. And with that in mind, we must have a deterrent to preserve and maintain peace through strength. And Ms. Robbins, again, thank you for your service. I'm so grateful to represent the Savannah River site. So I know firsthand of your good work and what it means to all of us. And with that in mind, and I'm the only serving member of Congress who actually worked there, and with that in mind, I know firsthand how capable the people are there, and I'm grateful for the local communities of Aiken and Barnwell that host the site, and I'm also grateful that it's by state because next door, Georgia, with Congressman Rick Allen, we all support the Savannah River site. And we've discussed before here the importance of plutonium pit production, a two-site solution, and it was a genius for somebody to come up with that, to have a two-site solution. And would you agree that modernizing our plutonium pits and bringing facilities such as the Savannah River Plutonium Production Facility online as soon as possible is vital to national security?
Yes, sir. The Savannah River Plutonium Production Facility plays a key role in restoring our pit production capability, which is essential for our nuclear deterrent modernization.
And the deterrence is so critical. And then, amazingly enough, Congressman Carvajal, I appreciate that General Gebara, he has jumped ahead in regard to the missile silos. And it's hard to imagine that Republicans and Democrats can work together, and including even Seth Moulton and John Garamendi. With that in mind, my time's really up, but I want to thank Admiral Wolfe for your service, and indeed the industrial base. We need to be working together to have it developed. And so however we can, and hey, it is bipartisan, and with Dr. Desjardins working with our colleagues on the left of the dais, we can achieve the deterrence for peace through strength. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from California, Mr. Garamendi.
I'm curious, what is deterrence? What are we deterring? And who? And then what does it take to deter? It seems to me that's the fundamental. Each and every one of you used that in your testimony. But I'm not so sure that we've ever come to a conclusion or even an understanding of deterrence. My guess is that each of you has a different definition of it and a different way in which it could be achieved if, in fact, you were to define it. I'm going to let it go at that, but it comes back to me that we really need to decide what these nuclear weapons are for. And then we can go about deciding what we need to use them for. But right now, it's kind of like whatever we might imagine. But this is a different weapon. Whether it's deployed on a LSRO, on a B-52, or a Slickum, or a Sentinel, or a Minuteman, or a Trident. What is deterrence? I think we need to think long and hard about that. The Nuclear Commission didn't deal with that, other than to say we need a lot of everything to deter. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Hamada, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As we speak, Russia and China are rapidly expanding and modernizing their nuclear forces. This includes building new missiles, new hypersonic weapons, and even exploring nuclear weapons in space. Now, these threats are not theoretical, they're very real and directly aimed at us. Now, we know the threats we face, but we don't know is if and when we are attacked, as America will have an adequate response. Now, our country cannot be complacent when lives are at risk, and that is why President Trump's Golden Dome initiative is so important. Now, for the first time in decades, we are prioritizing the safety of the American people. The Golden Dome will protect us from the threats from above. It is bold, ambitious, and exactly the deterrent our country needs. Now, we are here today to ensure America leads, not lags, so our enemies know that if they even consider threatening our homeland, they will fail. Now, my first question is to Ms. Robbins. You say that AI is accelerating some of our timelines, echoing what Secretary Wright's words that, quote, AI is the next Manhattan Project. Now, how do we counter our enemies' use of AI?
Thank you, sir, for that question. One of the ways that we can do that is by getting there faster and using it to drive efficiencies and advancements in our programs first. One of the ways that we are using it is to identify new materials, using it, if we use it on our weapons program, we can identify new systems faster. We can reconcile data faster. We are currently using it in our stockpile modernization for verification that components meet quality requirements. So this gives us more reliability in those quality inspections, and it also completes those more efficiently.
Very good. And you also mentioned that China and Russia dominate the field of nuclear reactor construction, and that they've designed 48 out of the 52 of the world's reactors being built since 2017. Now, that's pretty shocking to hear that our enemies are building 90% of the world's new reactors. Would you agree that this is a national security risk, and what is our current plan looking at that?
Yes, thank you. There's a couple of avenues. One, as Secretary Wright has been advancing new nuclear in the U.S. and enabling U.S. companies to expand their capabilities globally. That's key, as well as ensuring that we have the materials that we need. Another is our nuclear nonproliferation program engages with U.S. companies to design safeguards in to new reactor designs. So that ensures protection of our materials if we were to deploy reactors globally and even within the United States.
Thank you, Ms. Robbins. My next question is to you, Dr. Vann. You expressed grave concerns about Russia's interest in the deployment of nuclear weapons in space, which would float in orbit waiting to be detonated. Now, the consequences of that, as we all know, would be catastrophic. Now, what are the risks that hostile actors could detonate a nuke in orbit, and how do you think we should respond to this emerging threat?
Yeah, so as General Gebara mentioned earlier, I think the key for the Department of Defense is to be prepared, right? To understand what the potential risks and optionalities that our adversaries hold, work across our nuclear enterprise, understand those risks, and then develop countermeasures or deterrence measures in order to defend. That is absolutely critical to work those types of decisions through our policy colleagues as they set and establish what our nuclear policies are, and then across the acquisition and execution enterprise in order to develop the capabilities as directed for our nuclear deterrent.
Thank you, Doctor. Now, General, your testimony warns about the dangerous synergy of China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea as an emerging anti-Western coalition that could put us in a simultaneous conflicts with two or more nuclear armed powers. Now, how can we expand our alliances to reestablish deterrence?
Sir, thank you for the question. And so, the discussion of what alliances we have, what partners we have is a national level decision. I would say in general, we continue to be the partner of choice with across the world. As you look at, as an example, if you look at our bomber task forces that your United States Air Force operates, we've operated with roughly a quarter of the world's air forces over the last year to 18 months because everyone wants to be part of a team that is successful, can give lethality if necessary, but is understanding the freedoms associated with Western way of thought. And I don't know if you have anything to add on that.
I would say our extended deterrence partnerships remain essential, and certainly assuring our allies and partners is a fundamental role of our nuclear weapons.
Yeah, my time has expired. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no further members for questioning, this will conclude the open portion of this hearing. We will adjourn and move into the closed session, barring a quick comfort break. We'll see you all soon. The meeting is adjourned.